Hey everyone! As you're probably well aware, today Warhammer 40K 6th edition came out, so I figured I might as well give my 2 cents, like I'm guessing a lot of you out there are doing, about what I feel that's really cool about the new rulebook, what I didn't like particular, and just my overall impressions of the rulebook. This is just my first impressions. I've been able to go over it once or twice already, so I know that over the next couple weeks people are going to be getting together thinking about how these rules will actually affect the metagame and individual armies and such. But yeah, I just want to give you guys my first impressions. So first of all, I went up and picked up the book. This is just the normal edition book, not any of the special editions. It's pretty thick, as you can see here. It has a nice bookmark, but it's a pretty thick book. Basically, about half the book is dedicated to the rules, and the second half is dedicated to basically army showcases. These are what the models look like, some stories, some of the lore, and and then some of the updates, as well as the new rules such as the psychic disciplines. And that's, yeah. So to start off with, first of all, I think that the cover looks awesome. I really like the new cover art, as well as I like just the art in general in the book. I find it really nicely done. As you can see here, that picture looks really nice. Yeah, and just all of the full color pictures. The artwork was very, very well done, I found, for this book. Just throughout the book, it was really well put together. I really love, as I said, the artwork. So, see these pictures, it's full of just really cool pictures. And it just starts off with, how to play the game and such. And then we get very quickly to the rules. And there are a lot of rules. I didn't find to be that extreme of a jump from 5th edition to 6th edition overall, but there were some big things. In my opinion, some of the bigger rules included vehicles. As you're probably well aware now, there are things that's called hull points. Most tanks have hull points. In fact, most of them have 3 hull points. So the harder to kill tanks have 4, such as Land Raiders, and such things as like skimmers have, I think, 2, or speeders have 2. And they've changed a bunch of the rules, so whenever you glance a vehicle now, you just remove a hull point. You don't actually roll for a d6 for the damage chart. And then if you pen, then you roll for the damage chart on top of the removing a hull point. And once you get down to 0 hull points, it's counted as a wrecked. They've also slightly tweaked the damage chart, which I'll just go through the pages here. But basically now the damage chart, only a 6 will wreck the vehicle, and it's an explosion. There's no such thing as wrecked anymore. 4 is now weapon destroyed, and then they made 1 and 2 the equivalent of the old 1 on the dice. So now it's slightly harder to kill vehicles in that sense. However, in the same thing, now when you assault vehicles, you're basically hitting them and their weapons skill 0 or 1 depending on if they moved or not. So now most individuals are going to be hitting vehicles on a 3 even if they move flat out. So if they can get to a vehicle and assault it, that vehicle is in a lot of trouble. So that's pretty cool. The shooting phase is basically, the same as the old way, except now you can target out specific models if you're a character, and also you can shoot enemies that are coming towards you and assaulting you. That's pretty cool, called Snapshot. They've also changed it that heavy weapons can also shoot. It's also under Snapshot, so their ballistic skill is 1 if you have to move and shoot, but it's still pretty cool. So all the long fang squads out there, they can move and maybe get a couple good shots off. What I do think is also interesting is that now running is 2d6. If you're going through difficult terrain, it's 3d6, remove the highest. But that's also a really cool new rule. They've also made it slightly easier for deep striking. It's now they've slightly tweaked the chart, so now it's slightly easier to deep strike. Only a 1 will result in a death. The rest of them result in 2 or 3 result in your opponent moving them wherever they want, and 4, 5, and 6 just goes back to the next turn. But yeah, a lot of cool new rules that go through the book. There's of course calling out your opponent, so you can do challenges for characters. That's pretty cool. And there's now a movement by initiative during the assault phase, so you shuffle in based on your initiative level, so that might possibly change how things. I haven't yet figured out how that'll exactly tweak assaulting, but I think that's going to be very interesting. So yeah, that's pretty cool. There are tons of new special rules, which, as you can see here, here's the special rules section. There are just tons and tons. I'll zoom in just a little bit, but there are tons and tons of new special rules. So what they're probably going to do is FAQ. Well, actually, they've already FAQ'd all the armies. So actually, for all of you who are unaware, the FAQs are now up on the GW website. So go to gamesworkshop.com. They have FAQs now for all the new armies to describe their mastery levels and such things now as like psychic hoods. So if you have a Grey Knights army and you have a librarian with a psychic hood, because of the new rule, which is Deny the Witch. So now, whenever someone tries to cast a psychic spell, or psychic power, sorry, it acts kind of like the spells of 40K, or sorry, of Warhammer, and your opponent can now negate any psychic power on a 6, on a roll of a 6, so that's kind of cool. However, that removed all the psychic negation of like psychic hoods, so now in the FAQ for Grey Knights, it says just basically ignore the rules for a psychic hood, it doesn't mean anything now. So, pros and cons. But again, once again, pages and pages of special rules. And here right now is the Deep Strike section right there. As you can see, so it's only a 1 causes a death to them. I said there's tons and tons of new rules. Just pages upon pages of special rules. So that's pretty cool. And then they go into unit types, and what I really like about the unit types, I'll just zoom out just a little bit. So in the unit types, they actually go into first infantry, which are standard bikes and jet bikes right up here. Then they go into artillery, which artillery is not going to be, there's not that much artillery in 40K. Jump units are going to be awesome now, because when they assault in, they get initiative 10. That's pretty cool. And there's jetpack units like the Tau. Monstrous creatures. They gave a few interesting new rules to monstrous creatures, specifically now flying monstrous creatures, which in the FAQs you'll see that if you give a Hive Tyrant wings, for example, it becomes a flying monstrous creature. The Harpy's a flying monstrous creature, and so forth. And now flying monstrous creatures. There's an entire page here dedicated to flying monstrous creatures, where they have 2 different types of movement. One's called gliding and one's called swooping. And when a flying monstrous creature is swooping, it can move, I think, up to, let me just double check, yeah, up to 24 inches. And when they do, they're actually much harder to hit. If you're shooting at one, I believe you're shooting at ballistic skill 1, they become much harder to hit, and they become much harder to assault. That's pretty cool. Next, there's just tons of stuff about weapons. The weapons are pretty much identical to the previous edition, except for the fact now there's close combat weapons actually cause AP. Regarding the shooting, you can actually now break up your shots. If half the squad you're shooting at is in cover, you can choose to shoot at a subgroup of the squad, so it's kind of interesting. As I said, there's Overwatch is now in effect. There's, again, really nice artwork about all the guns. Here's just the ranged weapons. Some more awesome pictures of the close combat weapons. Cool stuff. Talks about crack grenades. Most of the grenades are very similar to the old ones, except I think crack grenades can now be used against monstrous creatures. So pretty cool stuff. It goes into characters, and there's characters now, and there's special characters. Characters are now like the leader of the squads. So if you go into the FAQs, it's also in the back of the book, a list of all the members of the army that would be considered characters. And there's also a really cool new rule called Watch Out Sir, or something along those lines, where you can actually get the grunts in your squad, the people that are less important in your squad, to take shots or wounds for the more important people in your squad on a 4+. These are specifically the characters and the special characters. They can, so if you have a very important character that you need to protect, you can actually get the lower guys to take wounds for them, which is pretty cool. What else? That's pretty much it. And there's the big difference in this version versus the previous edition, I would have to say, would be Psychers. Now there's mastery levels like the Grey Knights Codex, so you can obviously tell it was written, for this. There's mastery levels, so basically they kind of said that if you have an army that has Psychers in it. The number of psychic powers you can use per turn is basically the mastery level, and they can choose to take their normal rules, or they can take the new cool psychic rules. Depending on which army you have, there's different ones available. If you check out my card review, I just go over a little bit about some armies can take certain psychic powers. They're all in the back of the book, the rules. So these are all psychic powers, and then there's vehicles. As I said, about the assaulting vehicles and the shooting vehicles has changed slightly. Also, a cool new thing, cover is now 25%, which if the squad is 25% covered, or a vehicle's 25% covered, it grants it a 5+ cover save as opposed to the old 4+ cover save. That's pretty interesting. Squadrons and Transports. The big thing about the new vehicles is the flyer section. There's a huge section right now about flyers. Basically, flyers can move really fast. They're also very hard to hit, so if you try to shoot them, you're shooting at ballistic skill 1, and they're very, very hard to assault. I don't think you can actually assault them. When they're moving flat out, you can't assault them whatsoever. Heavy vehicles, tanks and walkers, once again, they're very similar to the old ones, except now they have hull points. And that's about it. And then it goes into just types of terrain. The big thing about this edition now is you can buy terrain. I haven't yet understood the rules about it, but you can purchase terrain for certain game types. And there's a slight change to how if you're in a building and it gets shot, changes. That's about it. And that's pretty much the big rule change. And there's also the Warlord, which I think is a really cool new rule. You allocate 1 HQ as called the Warlord, and then you choose if they're going to be a command trait, a personal trait, or a strategic trait. I'll just zoom in here, which as you can see these. And basically then you roll a dice at the beginning of the game, and depending on which one you choose, it grants it various powers. Some of them grant specifically to your squad, to your army, and they're pretty cool. And you just get a different rule depending on what you want to do and what army you're leading. I think it's kind of cool. Oh, another one of the big changes right here is allies, and this right here is the allies matrix. Just move this, zoom it in. So this right here is a chart of all the armies in 40K and which ones can they ally with and which ones they can't. And obviously you can tell this bottom line right here is Tyranids. Unfortunately, Tyranids, in my opinion, were the worst 5th edition codex, and they're the ones who need allies the most. Other than, I guess, Tau have a few options because they're so friendly and awesome. But Tyranids, on the other hand, it makes sense, obviously, lore-wise, they wouldn't hang out with anybody because they just kind of dominate planets and eat everything, but they can't ally with anybody. Kind of sucks, but oh well, life goes on. A bunch about defenses, and then it goes into game turns. Game turns are still very similar to the old ones. What I really love about this new book is there's a bunch of different missions now and a bunch of different deployments. The deployments are very similar to the old ones, but now there's a bunch of different missions, way more than 3. So it'll add a lot of variety to the game. So you see here, this one's called the Relic, the previous one's called the Emperor's Will, and each one has its own, and then you roll for deployments and stuff. And that's basically it for the rules. And then the next part of the book is basically dedicated to awesome pictures, a little bit about the Imperium, a little bit about Chaos, the fall of the Empire, and so forth. So it just goes over a lot of the lore of 40K, the new lore, which I haven't had a chance to go through yet. I've been focusing more on the rules. But as I said, the artwork is just absolutely fantastic. I love it. I'm a type of person that really gets caught up in the nice, beautiful art of this, and including this one. There's a really beautiful fold-out picture of the Imperium. So I think it's really nice. Looks really cool. But yeah, overall, I have to say that the artwork is just by far my favorite part about this book. All about as I said, more about the lore, what happened, the fall of the Empire. And then it goes into each army, so Sisters of Battle. Cool. Eventually then it just goes into each army, so here's Orcs, Sisters of Battle's already passed, here's Eldar, all the different Dark Eldar traits, Necrons, Tyranids, etc. It just goes through each army, a little bit about them, some of their tools, their weapons, a little, their history, Space Marines. It's a huge book, as I said. I'm going over it page by page, and it's been a lot of cool stuff. Space Marines. Obviously, the main focus of this is Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, but the Imperium, obviously, because they're the good guys. People really love the good guys. Then it's just pages and pages of model showcases. Most of these pictures are directly from the codices themselves, so it's nothing really new, other than the cool new models that they just released, like the Storm Talon and stuff, and some of the cooler new Dark Eldar models, like the engines. So they're pretty cool. Tau, unfortunately nothing new in the Tau world, because, you know, there's nothing ever new in the Tau world. Here's a new picture of the Turvagon here. So, as I said, they've included all the cool new models that have come out recently in this book. It's a great enemy. Yeah, and that's about it. So then a little bit about the hobby part, which I'm interested in, but I tend to be a little bit more experienced in that section. You know how to, and then just a bunch of collections from various people. That's about it. So then a little bit of campaigns. The second half of the book, I don't find a lot to be in this section, but then the important stuff I found is in the second half, sorry, the second appendix, which is, I think, a very, very important part. It's called the reference section. And what it does is it gives an army list for each army. I'll just zoom in, for example. And it basically gives the stat line of all of the things in the army. Most of them are standard, so you'll know most of them off by heart, but the big important ones are the type, which I'm zooming in here. So for Imperial Guard, the first model, it's an independent, LN, which is infantry, IN, which is infantry, and CH, which means it's a character. So it's kind of an upgrade in the squad, and it can be called a character. There are a bunch of different types. And the second very important thing, which you can see right here for the Chimera, is HP, so hull points. And as I mentioned, most big tanks have 3. The skimmers, the speeders have 2, and the really big heavy tanks, like the Land Raider, have 4. Pretty standard. And if you go through this part in your army, you can figure out exactly the number of hull points and the types of characters in your army. And as I said, definitely go to gw.com and check out the FAQs for each army so you can know exactly what the big changes are. And finally, if you don't want to go out and buy those expensive cards, well, they're only like $10, $15 depending on where you live in the world, but if you don't want to go buy them, here is the list. So on page 418, it goes through all the psychic disciplines, which ones are available for each armies, and a little bit about each spell that you can potentially get, depending on what you choose. Like Biomancy, you roll the d6, these are the different spells that you can get. Pyromancy, Divination, Telepathy, Telekinesis, and a little bit of the game summary, so just to sum up all the game system. So that's about it for the book. So my overall first impressions, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think this game is going to be designed for more friends playing friends in these really grand, epic, giant games that are going to be a lot of fun, very cinematic, a lot of drama, a lot of fun. I don't really know how things like purchasing terrain and some of these missions are going to exactly translate into the tournament play. That's my biggest concern. I don't know if the competitive tournament play will be as competitive, and as I said, I think that depending on which tournament you go to, they're going to have specific FAQs, especially for like the allies and stuff. What exactly can you bring? Can you bring your own terrain? That kind of stuff. I think that'll be really important to each tournament, and they're going to have to create their own FAQs to establish the rules for each tournament. But the rules are very interesting. The FAQs are very interesting. And I recommend you guys go and check them out. I think over the next month or so, people are going to sit down, they're going to play this game and see exactly how each army is affected by the new rules. I personally think Tyranids are probably not the best shape. Orcs, depending on how you play them, may not be in the best shape. Tau may have gotten a little bit of an upgrade because you can take a couple allies, but we'll have to see. And yeah, I think it's really cool. And that's my summary of the new 6th edition book and my first impressions. The rules I think that are very interesting. The rules I think that the one rule I really wanted to change actually was instant death. I like the warriors for the Tyranid army, and I was a little saddened that they didn't change the instant death rules. So the warriors still aren't very good. I still wouldn't take warriors into a competitive game, unfortunately. So that's about it for my summary and my breakdown of this new book. I hope you enjoyed my summary of this, the 6th edition book, and please like the video, comment on the video if you have any comments, and subscribe to my channel if you already haven't done so. It really does help a lot. And until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting, everyone.